The snowstorm howled across the icy moon, swallowing every sound. The crash site of the small human transport shuttle was little more than twisted metal buried under white frost. Inside the wreckage, one man moved weakly, his breath fogging the cold air. His name was Eli Ward, a repair engineer from the frontier colonies. He had been traveling alone when his ship was struck by a magnetic storm. Eli crawled out of the wreckage, every bone aching. The wind cut through his clothes like knives. His visor screen flickered, showing the outside temperature -60 degrees. He tried to send a distress signal, but his communicator was dead. His only hope was to find shelter before his body gave up. Through the storm, Eli saw a faint orange light moving across the snow. He blinked, thinking it was a trick of his frozen mind. But then the light came closer, clearer. It wasn't a beacon, it was someone. A tall figure wrapped in fur-lined armor, glowing faintly under the pale sky. The figure stopped in front of him. Snow swirling around her boots, she removed her mask, revealing a face that made Eli's breath catch. Not human. Her skin had a faint golden hue, her eyes large and cat-like, and her long fur shimmered with a soft blue glow. She was a Velrani, one of the feline-like species that ruled this sector of space. "Human," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You should not be here." Eli tried to speak, his lips numb. "Ship. Crash. Help," was all he could manage. The alien's ears twitched. She studied him for a long moment, then sighed softly. "You're dying," she murmured, "and I can't leave you here." She reached down, gripping his arm. Her fur brushed his wrist, warm and soft despite the cold. Eli instinctively brushed off a patch of snow that clung to her shoulder. The reaction was immediate. She froze, eyes wide. "Stop touching my fur, human," she snapped, her voice sharp like a blade. Eli raised his hands weakly. Sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean..." Her tail flicked once in irritation, but there was no real anger in her eyes. Just something else, something like confusion. She sighed again, almost to herself. "You humans really have no sense of boundaries," she muttered. Despite her words, she pulled him up and half-dragged, half-carried him toward the ridge. Each step was a struggle against the storm. Eli's head spun, his body going numb. The alien's strength was surprising for her size, and her fur glowed brighter the colder it got. It was like walking beside a living light. They reached a small cavern at the base of a mountain. Inside, the wind died down. The alien placed him near a rock wall where a faint heat vented from the ground. "You'll live for now," she said quietly, removing a thermal blanket from her pack and wrapping it around him. Eli looked at her, still dazed. "Why are you helping me?" She didn't answer right away. Her glowing eyes watched the entrance, scanning the storm beyond. "Because if I don't..."
"Your death will stain my path," she finally said.
"Velrani believe every life we find becomes part of our honor." Eli gave a tired smile. "That's poetic," he murmured. The alien's ears flicked again and she frowned slightly. "I am Lyra," she said after a pause. "Scout of the Northern Crest." "Eli," he whispered. "Engineer, from Earth colonies." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Human colonies," she repeated as if tasting the word. "You are a long way from home, Eli." Eli nodded weakly. "Yeah, wasn't planning to crash here." Lyra gave a quiet huff, almost a laugh, but quickly stifled. She crouched beside him, checking his pulse with a small scanner. Her claws were careful, her movements precise. Eli's gaze drifted to her fur again. It wasn't like any animal fur he had seen. Each strand seemed to carry light, shifting between silver and blue. "Your fur, it's beautiful," he said without thinking. Lyra's ears twitched. She looked at him sharply. "Humans and their words," she said with mock irritation. "Always saying strange things." She stood, brushing frost from her armor. Her tail flicked once, betraying amusement she didn't want to show. Outside, the storm continued to rage. After a few moments of silence, Eli's voice came softly. "So, you're not going to hand me over to your command?" Lyra didn't turn. "No one knows you're here," she said simply, "and I will keep it that way for now." "Why?" he asked. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Because," she said, "I want to understand why humans keep doing the impossible." Eli smiled faintly. "What impossible thing did I do?" "You survived a crash on Velrani ice without fur or claws," she said dryly. "That's either bravery or stupidity." "Maybe both," Eli whispered. and despite the pain, he laughed softly. Lyra's ears flattened slightly. As if she didn't understand why that sound made her chest feel warm, she turned away quickly, muttering under her breath. Strange creature. The wind howled outside, but in the small cave, warmth spread between two beings who were never meant to meet. The human with broken hands and the alien with glowing fur. Two enemies finding silence in something dangerously close to trust. Lyra looked at him one last time before curling near the entrance. Guarding him from the storm, her voice came softly through the dark. Sleep, human, tomorrow I decide whether saving you was foolish. Eli closed his eyes, whispering through chattering teeth. Thanks anyway. Lyra's ears flicked again, and for the first time in her life, she smiled at a human, unseen in the shadows of the cave. The storm screamed outside, but inside, the ice moon had found a heartbeat again, a fragile warmth born from two different worlds. When morning came, the storm had not yet faded, but the wind's fury softened into a low moan that echoed through the mountains. Inside the cave, faint orange light from a small heat source shimmered on the walls. Eli woke slowly, his body stiff, his throat dry. He felt the blanket around him and the faint warmth that seeped from the ground. For a moment he thought he was back on his ship, but the soft purring hum nearby reminded him where he truly was. Lyra sat near the entrance, sharpening a thin, curved blade with steady movements. Her glowing fur reflected against the stone like threads of light weaving across the cave. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. You're awake. Human, she said simply. Eli rubbed his head, trying to focus. Yes, he muttered. Still alive, thanks to you. Lyra's tail twitched. Don't thank me yet, she said. If my patrol finds us here, both of us will be buried in the snow. Her tone was calm, but Eli could sense something underneath it. A tension that was not only fear but conflict. He sat up carefully, the cold biting through the fabric of his uniform. Why help me then? He asked quietly. You could have walked away. Lyra looked down at her blade, the reflection of her eyes flickering across the steel. Maybe I should have, she said softly, but I didn't. Silence filled the cave. Only the sound of wind and her blade against stone breaking it. Eli noticed her hands strong but elegant, covered with a soft layer of fur. Her fingers trembled slightly as she put the blade away. Your ship's beacon, she asked, does it still work? Eli reached into his damaged kit, pulling out the shattered communicator. No signal, he said. I'll need time to fix it. Maybe a few hours if I can find parts, Lyra frowned. You have until nightfall, she warned. I can't hide you longer, Eli nodded. Understood. As he worked, Lyra watched quietly, her golden eyes narrowing at the way his hands moved over the broken device. Humans, she said suddenly. You always build things that break. Eli smiled faintly without looking up. And then we fix them. Her ear flicked at that. A small sound almost like amusement. Strange philosophy, she murmured. Velrani believed that what breaks should be replaced. That's the difference then, Eli said. We think everything deserves a second chance. Lyra turned away, pretending to check the cave entrance, but her expression softened. Second chances, she repeated quietly, as if testing the meaning of the words. Hours passed. The storm continued to whisper outside. Eli managed to restore part of his communicator system, sparks flashing faintly in the dim light. Lyra had gone out once, returning with frozen rations and a small flask of heated liquid. She placed it beside him. Drink slowly, she said. It's not made for humans. Eli sniffed the drink. It smelled like herbs and metal, but he took a cautious sip anyway. Not bad, he said, coughing slightly. Bitter though, Lyra smirked faintly. That means it's good, she replied. Sitting near him, her tail wrapping around her knees. After a long pause, Eli spoke softly. Lyra, why does your fur glow like that? She blinked, surprised by the question. You notice everything, don't you? She said. It's part of our biology, a trait from our ancestors who lived on dark worlds. It helps us communicate emotions, or hide them. Eli studied the faint, shifting hues in her fur, which changed with her voice. So when it turns blue, that means? She gave him a side glance. Curiosity, she said, and confusion. Eli grinned. You're confused about me? Lyra's ears flicked sharply. Don't flatter yourself, human, she said quickly. I'm only curious why you haven't died yet. He chuckled weakly. Guess humans are stubborn. Lyra didn't laugh, but her eyes softened again. She looked away, her fur flickering a deep violet. Or maybe you just don't give up, she whispered to herself. Suddenly, the communicator beeped weakly. The signal screen flashed once. It's working, Eli said, excitement rising in his voice. But Lyra stood up instantly, her fur turning a pale silver. Fear. Turn it off, she hissed. Now. Eli froze. What? Why? Because that signal will bring patrol drones, she said sharply. They'll track the frequency within minutes. He quickly shut it down, the glow fading. Lyra's breath came fast, her eyes darting toward the cave entrance. They're near, she whispered. I can feel it. Eli stood shakily. Then let's go. There must be somewhere else, she grabbed his arm. Pushing him back. No, stay here, she ordered. I'll draw them away. You'll be killed, he said firmly. You said your kind hunts humans. What will they do if they find you hiding one? Lyra's voice dropped low. They'll do worse than kill me. The words hung heavy in the air. Eli's heart pounded. Then don't go, he said. We'll think of something. But Lyra shook her head. Eyes fierce now, you don't understand. Human. I'm a soldier first, and if I don't protect you now, everything I've done will mean nothing. Before he could answer, she turned toward the entrance, her fur flaring bright gold, the color of determination. Stay quiet, and no matter what you hear, don't move, she said. If I'm not back before dark, run north. Follow the ridge, Lyra, he called softly. Why are you risking your life for me? She paused at the mouth of the cave, her silhouette outlined against the snow. Because, she said, her voice almost a whisper, you touched my fur and didn't treat me like a weapon. Then she was gone into the storm, disappearing into the white world beyond, leaving Eli alone with the echo of her words and the faint warmth she left behind. Outside, shapes moved through the blizzard, dark figures in armor. Scanning the snow with red lights, Lyra's voice rang faintly through the wind, commanding, cold, perfect for the role she must play. No sign of the human, she told her commander. The wreck is frozen solid. Eli listened from the cave, heart pounding, realizing the truth. She wasn't just protecting him. She was lying to her own kind, risking everything, and for the first time, he understood what courage looked like on a world covered in ice. The storm had finally passed, leaving a silent white world stretching endlessly outside the cave. The air was clearer now, filled with cold light from the rising twin suns. Eli sat near the small heat vent, staring at the communicator in his hands. It was fixed yet useless. He couldn't risk activating it again. Not while Lyra was out there facing her own people. Every sound from the wind made his heart jump. Every shadow near the entrance made him expect her return. Hours felt like days until finally, a familiar glow shimmered through the icy haze. Lyra stepped inside, her armor scratched, her fur dusted with frost and blood. Eli rushed to her side. You're hurt, he said quickly. Reaching for her arm, she pulled back at first. But her strength failed. It's nothing, she muttered, though her breathing was rough. One of the soldiers suspected something, but I handled it. Eli frowned. Handled it? You mean? She interrupted. Don't ask. Human, her voice cold but trembling at the edge. You wouldn't understand what it means to kill one of your own. He said nothing, just guided her gently to sit near the vent. Her fur glowed faintly, shifting from silver to dull blue. He noticed how her hand trembled as she reached for the flask. The proud warrior was bleeding, and for the first time he saw not the soldier, but the person beneath the armor. Hold still, he said, pulling out a med patch from his emergency kit. Lyra tried to protest, but he gave her a small smile. You saved me, remember? Let me return the favor. She went silent, her ears lowering slightly. He cleaned the wound carefully, pressing the patch to her side. Her fur quivered under his touch, and a strange sound escaped her throat, a low purring vibration that filled the air with warmth. Eli blinked. Are you purring? Lyra's eyes widened, and she immediately looked away. No, she said quickly. It's a reflex. A biological response to warmth. Eli smiled softly. Right, biological, he said teasingly. Guess I'm just lucky then. Her tail flicked once, a sign of irritation and embarrassment mixed together. Humans talk too much, she muttered, but there was no anger in her voice. Silence fell again, but it wasn't awkward. The storm outside had faded into distant winds, and inside the cave, the warmth between them grew. Eli leaned back, his exhaustion finally catching up. You know, he said quietly, when I first saw you, I thought you'd kill me. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her ears twitching. I almost did, she admitted. But your eyes were too honest. Eli chuckled weakly. Honest eyes saved me. That's new, she smirked faintly. Don't get used to it, human. They sat in silence again, listening to the faint hum of the planet. The glow of her fur brightened and dimmed like a heartbeat. Eli found himself staring at it without realizing, mesmerized by the way the color shifted when she spoke. Does your fur change color based on emotion? He asked softly. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. It reacts to neural signals. The shades reflect instinct. Fear, trust, anger, curiosity. What's blue mean? He asked, watching the faint light rippling through her fur. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Calm, she said quietly. And safety. Eli's chest warmed at the words. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was filled with understanding. Then Lyra shifted slightly, wincing as her side brushed the rock. Eli instinctively reached out to steady her, his hand brushing the thick, soft fur along her neck. She froze instantly, her entire body tensing. Stop, she whispered sharply, her voice trembling. Don't touch my fur. Human? Eli quickly pulled back. Sorry, I didn't mean. But she caught his wrist before he could move away. Her claws didn't dig in, just rested gently. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly amber now. You didn't mean to, she repeated softly. But you did. Her voice changed, lower, gentler. The air between them seemed to thicken. The glow from her fur softened, flickering like light beneath water. It's strange, she whispered. When you touch it, it doesn't feel like pain. Eli frowned slightly. Then what does it feel like? Lyra hesitated, her tail curling slightly. Warm, she said finally, and confusing. He smiled faintly. Welcome to humanity. For the first time, Lyra laughed. A soft, melodic sound that echoed through the cave. Her laughter was short, but it changed something. The distance between them no longer felt so wide. As the night deepened, they shared food, quiet stories, and hesitant glances. Eli spoke about Earth, the oceans, the rain, the noise of cities. Lyra listened, eyes wide. Her world was made of snow and silence. The idea of a planet filled with green forests sounded like fantasy. Maybe one day you'll see it, Eli said softly. Earth, I mean. Lyra looked down, her fur shifting pale silver again. Maybe, she said. If your people stop sending ships into our space, Eli sighed. We just want to explore. And we just want to survive, she replied. Their eyes met again, both realizing how similar their desires were, even if their worlds called them enemies. Later that night, as the cave grew darker, Lyra lay near the entrance, watching the snowflakes drift through the wind. Eli had fallen asleep beside the vent, his hand resting near hers without meaning to. Her fingers brushed against his skin. Her fur shimmered faintly pink. She whispered so softly even she could barely hear it. Please, don't stop. The moment was fragile, real and terrifying. For the first time, Lyra realized what truly scared her. It wasn't the cold or her enemies. It was the warmth of a human who made her forget she was supposed to hate him. Outside, the frozen world slept in silence. But inside the cave, a quiet heartbeat of trust began to grow. The next morning, the air was thin and sharp. Sunlight spilled over the icy cliffs like glass fire. Eli woke to silence. Lyra hadn't returned yet, and a wave of fear ran through him. He waited, listening, every muscle tense. Then a shadow appeared at the cave's mouth, and she stepped in, covered in frost, her breathing heavy. They're searching the valley, she said quietly. They know someone survived the crash. Eli's heart sank. How close are they? Lyra crouched beside him, her fur flickering pale orange with stress. Too close, she replied. They brought hounds, tracking drones that can smell the metal of your uniform. Eli looked at his suit, then at the communicator. Then we have to move, he said. We can't stay here. Lyra nodded, but her expression was grim. There's a mining tunnel a few kilometers north, she said. Abandoned for years, but deep enough to hide in. If we reach it before dusk, we may survive. Eli packed what little he had, slinging the bag over his shoulder. Lead the way. Outside, the wind had calmed, but the silence was worse. Every crunch of their boots echoed across the frozen plains. The two suns hung low, and long shadows stretched across the snow. Lyra moved gracefully, scanning the horizon with her keen golden eyes. Her fur glowed faintly blue, a sign of focus and alertness. Eli followed closely, trying to match her pace. "Lyra," he said quietly, "what happens if they catch you?" She didn't look back. "They'll strip my rank, then my life," she said flatly. "The Velrani don't forgive traitors." He clenched his jaw. "Then I'll make sure they don't." Lyra's ears flicked. "You're brave," she said softly, "but foolish." They walked for hours, weaving between ridges of jagged ice and shattered rock. Occasionally, Lyra stopped to scan the sky, her instincts sharper than any scanner. Then suddenly she froze, one ear twitching. "Down," she whispered, pushing Eli into a snow trench. A low hum filled the air. A dark shape glided overhead. A patrol drone, black and silent, scanning with red light. They stayed still, breath held. Eli could feel the pounding of his own heart. The drone hovered for a moment, then turned away, disappearing into the fog. Lyra exhaled slowly. "That was close," she murmured, standing again. "They're sweeping this entire sector." Eli looked at her, noticing how the glow of her fur had dimmed. "You're exhausted," he said. "We can rest." "No," she cut him off. "We move." But as they walked, her steps grew slower, her breath uneven. The wound from before had reopened. Blood staining her fur, Eli noticed and grabbed her arm. "Stop pretending," he said firmly. "You're hurt." Lyra tried to pull away, but he wouldn't let go. "If you keep pushing, you'll collapse." "I can't," she hissed. "If I stop, they'll find us." Eli's voice softened. "Then let me help." Before she could protest, he lifted her arm over his shoulder, supporting her weight. She tried to resist, but her strength gave out. "You're insane," she muttered. "No human can carry a Velrani soldier." Eli smiled faintly. "Guess you don't know humans that well." Together, they pushed through the ice fields. The storm returned slowly, a wall of wind and snow building in the distance. "We'll use it," Lyra said. "The storm will hide our trail." Hours later, they reached the mouth of the abandoned mine, a dark scar in the mountain. Inside, Lyra ordered, pulling a flare from her pack. It hissed to life, casting red light over rusted machinery and frozen tunnels. They stepped inside, the air heavy with silence and decay. "This place," Eli said quietly, "feels haunted." Lyra smirked faintly. "Everything on this moon is haunted," she replied, "by the ghosts of those who froze trying to escape it." She set down her gear and leaned against the wall. Breathing hard, Eli knelt beside her. "Let me see your side," he said. She didn't protest this time. He peeled back the fabric carefully, revealing the deep cut. Her fur shimmered faintly. "You shouldn't care this much," she whispered, watching him work. "Maybe humans are built to care," he said softly, pressing a clean bandage over the wound. Lyra's gaze lingered on him, her voice quiet. "You risk your life for a creature that should be your enemy." Eli smiled. "You're not my enemy, Lyra. You saved me." Her ears lowered, her fur glowing faint pink. "Strange," she murmured. "You sound like my father." Eli looked up. "Your father?" She nodded slowly. "He fought in the Great War. He saved a human child once. They called him a traitor. He died for it." Eli froze, realizing the weight behind her actions. "Then you helped me because of him," he said softly. "Maybe," she whispered. "Or maybe because I didn't want to be like the rest of them." Before he could respond, a sudden metallic echo rang from deeper in the mine. Lyra's ears shot up. "They found us," she hissed, grabbing her weapon. Red light flickered at the far end of the tunnel. Drones, followed by armored soldiers. Lyra pushed Eli behind a rusted crate. "Stay down," she ordered. "If they see you, they'll shoot." "But what about you?" Eli asked urgently. Her fur flared gold. "I'll distract them," she said. "You run when I give the signal." She stepped into the open, weapon drawn. Her voice rang out, commanding, "This sector is restricted. What are you doing here?" The soldiers hesitated, recognizing her armor. "Commander Lyra," one asked, "we tracked a human signal here." "There's no human here," she lied smoothly. "Only a malfunctioning probe." The soldiers exchanged looks, uncertain, but the lead drone scanned the air and beeped. "Biological anomaly detected." Eli clenched his fists, hiding his breath. Lyra's fur blazed white. She raised her weapon and fired first. The mine exploded with sound, laser bolts cutting through dust and echoes. Eli jumped up, shouting, "Lyra!" She turned briefly. "Run!" she yelled, firing again. Her movements were fluid, fierce, a blur of light and fury. The ceiling cracked, dust raining down. The tunnel shook, and an explosion tore through the far wall. Eli grabbed the fallen communicator and sprinted toward her. "We have to go," he shouted. Lyra's weapon overheated, smoke curling from the barrel. "Now!" she screamed, pushing him toward the back exit. They ran through collapsing tunnels, the roar of battle fading behind them. When they finally burst into the open air again, both fell into the snow, gasping. The mountain behind them burned, lighting the sky red. Eli turned to her. "You saved me again," he said, breathless. Lyra laughed weakly, her fur flickering soft gold. "Don't make it a habit, human," she whispered. "I'm running out of lives." The storm swallowed their laughter, but not their bond. In that moment, on a world of ice and war, a fragile thread tied two enemies together. One built of trust, courage, and something dangerously close to love. Night fell heavy over the broken mountains. The air shimmered with ash and frozen dust. Eli and Lyra had found refuge inside another collapsed structure, a half-buried Velrani outpost, long abandoned. Its broken lights cast a faint glow over the walls, painting everything in shades of blue and silver. Eli sat against a wall, catching his breath. His face was pale from exhaustion. Lyra crouched near a broken console, scanning for movement outside. Her armor was dented, her fur singed from the firefight, yet her eyes burned bright. "You should rest," Eli said softly. "You've been awake for 2 days." Lyra didn't look at him. "I can't," she said. "If they pick up our heat signatures, we're dead." Eli leaned his head back, staring at the cracked ceiling. "You said something back there," he murmured, "about your father and a human." Lyra froze, her claws stopping mid-motion. For a moment, silence filled the outpost, only the faint hum of a dying generator breaking it. "I shouldn't have said that," she whispered. "Maybe," Eli said, "but I want to understand." She turned toward him slowly, her glowing eyes reflecting both weariness and memory. "He was a soldier," she began quietly. "Commander Ralvarin, one of the finest the Velrani had. He fought humans in the First Border War." Eli nodded slowly. "And he saved a child?" Lyra's tail twitched once, her voice low. "He found a human boy trapped under debris after a raid instead of leaving him. He carried the boy out. He disobeyed direct orders. And your people punished him," Eli said softly. Her jaw tightened. "They called it betrayal. They stripped him of his honor. And when I was old enough to understand, they made sure I remembered that word. Traitor?" Eli's chest ached at the bitterness in her tone. "So you learned to hate humans," he said. Lyra's fur flickered dull blue. "No," she said. "I learned to hide compassion, because compassion kills." She stood and paced slowly, her boots crunching against the frost. "My father said something before he died," she continued. "He said, 'If the day comes when a human saves you, don't run from it.' I thought it was madness, until I met you." Eli stared at her. Lost for words, he saw the strength behind her eyes, but also the deep loneliness that came from being torn between two worlds. "Maybe he wasn't mad," Eli said softly. "Maybe he saw what could be, instead of what was." Lyra looked at him sharply. "Don't make me believe in things I can't have," she said, her voice trembling. Eli stood slowly and took a step closer. "What if it's not about belief? he asked. What if it's just choice? Lyra's breath caught. The glow of her fur deepened, shifting into soft hues of violet and pink. Humans, she whispered, almost laughing, always turning pain into hope. He smiled faintly. It's what keeps us alive. The silence between them grew heavier, but it wasn't cold. Lyra reached up unconsciously. Touching the scar on her side, Eli noticed her hand trembling slightly. He reached out gently, covering it with his own. Her fur brushed his skin, warm, alive, and electric. Her eyes widened, but she didn't pull away. You really don't understand what this means to my kind, do you? She asked quietly. Eli shook his head. Then tell me. Lyra took a slow breath, her fur glowing faintly brighter. Our fur is not just decoration, she said. It connects to our nerves, our instincts. When someone touches it, they feel our emotions, our truth. There's no hiding. Eli's voice softened. So when I touch it, you feel my heart, she whispered. And I feel yours. Her words hung in the cold air like a secret forbidden by both their worlds. She didn't move, her claws brushing lightly against his wrist. When you first touched me, she said, I wanted to strike you. I noticed, Eli said quietly. Smiling a little, her lips curved faintly. But then, I wanted to know why it didn't feel wrong, she whispered, why it felt right. Eli swallowed hard. Maybe because it was. Lyra looked away, her tail curling around her legs. You don't understand, human. My people believe that if a Velrani allows another to touch her fur willingly, it's a bond, something deeper than loyalty, deeper than blood. Eli's heart skipped a beat. And what does that make us? He asked softly. Lyra met his gaze, her voice barely audible. It makes me a traitor again. Eli stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. No, it makes you brave. Her eyes shimmered with light and something like tears. You're dangerous, Eli, she whispered. You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. He smiled sadly. Maybe you're supposed to be more than what they told you. The wind outside howled against the metal walls, but inside, the world stood still. Lyra slowly leaned her forehead against his, her fur glowing warm gold. If my people see us like this, she said softly, they'll kill us both. Eli's voice was steady. Then we live quietly, Lyra laughed weakly. There's nothing quiet about you. For a long moment they stayed there in silence, human and alien, warmth and frost, warrior and survivor, bound by something neither could explain. Then the communicator on the floor flickered suddenly, a faint signal flashing across the cracked screen. Incoming transmission. The display read. Eli bent down quickly. It's the rescue fleet, they're close, he said, excitement in his voice. Lyra's expression darkened. If they come here, the Velrani will intercept them, she warned. This moon is still under patrol. Eli hesitated. Then we have to warn them, or they'll walk into a trap. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Sending a signal will expose us. Eli looked at her firmly. If we stay silent, they die. She stared at him for a long moment, her fur pulsing faint gold. Then she sighed softly. You're impossible, she whispered. Just like my father said humans would be. He smiled faintly. You said it yourself. Humans never stop trying. Lyra reached for the communicator, her hand brushing his. Then let's do something worth dying for, she said quietly. Their eyes met once more, and this time, neither looked away. Outside, lightning rolled across the sky. Reflecting off the frozen peaks, the storm of war and fate was coming. But for now, in that broken outpost, two souls stood together. No longer enemies, no longer strangers. Just two beings who finally understood what it meant to touch truth beneath the fur. The air inside the outpost grew heavy. The storm outside raged like a living creature, shaking the ground beneath them. The communicator blinked faintly. Its screen cracked but alive. A weak signal pulsed in and out, echoing through the empty halls like a heartbeat. Eli crouched near the console, fingers flying over damaged controls. I can boost the transmission, he said, but I'll need a power source strong enough to reach the fleet. Lyra's ears twitched, her eyes narrowing. The old reactor, she said, pointing toward the lower level. It's unstable, but it might work. Eli looked at her. Might? She smirked faintly. You humans like risk, don't you? He smiled. Only when it's worth something. They descended into the lower chamber. The walls were blackened, the air humming with static. A half-broken reactor core flickered in the center. Leaking faint blue light, Lyra approached it carefully. Her fur dimming to absorb the radiation. It's still active, she said, but if we overload it, the explosion will level this entire mountain. Eli checked the readings on his wrist console. We don't need a full overload, he said. Just enough to power the transmitter long enough to warn the fleet. Lyra hesitated. And if it goes wrong? He looked up, meeting her eyes. Then we make it count. For a moment, she didn't answer. Her fur shimmered with silent conflict, then she nodded. Let's make it count. They worked together in silence. Their movements synchronized, human logic and alien instinct blending seamlessly. Sparks flew as Eli reconnected old circuits. Lyra rerouted energy conduits with claws that moved faster than human hands could track. Every hum of machinery echoed like a heartbeat between them. When the last wire was connected, Eli took a deep breath. Once I start the charge, we'll have 3 minutes to send the message and shut it down. Lyra stepped closer. And if we can't? He gave a small smile. Then at least we'll go out doing something right. Her gaze lingered on him. Unreadable. You humans always talk about right and wrong, she whispered. As if the universe cares. Eli's voice softened. Maybe it doesn't. But we do. Lyra's fur glowed faint gold, the color of understanding. She touched his shoulder lightly, her voice almost a whisper. Then may your stars remember you, Eli Ward. He smiled faintly. And may yours finally forgive you, Lyra Varen. The reactor roared to life. Lights flared across the chamber as power surged upward. The communicator on the upper floor came alive. Transmitting through the interference, Eli's voice echoed through the static. This is Engineer Eli Ward to any human ship within range. Velrani forces are inbound. Repeat, inbound, do not land. Static answered him, then a faint voice. Signal received. Human fleet rerouting. Eli exhaled, relief flooding through him. But before he could celebrate, the warning siren screamed. Energy surge detected. Lyra shouted, It's overloading. Eli looked at the control panel. The stabilizer's gone. Someone has to shut it down manually. Lyra grabbed her weapon. Then we do it together. He shook his head. No, the radiation's climbing fast. You'll die if you go near it. Her fur flared red with anger. And you won't? I'm already dying on this moon, he said softly. Let me make it worth something. She stared at him, trembling. No, she whispered. I won't let you. Eli smiled faintly. You already saved me twice, Lyra. Let me return it once. Before she could stop him, he sprinted toward the reactor core, sparks bursting around him. Lyra shouted his name, running after him. But the heat forced her back. Eli! He reached the control console, hands shaking, his skin burning from radiation. The alarm screamed. Manual override engaged, he muttered, pressing the final sequence. The energy stabilized, the overload contained. The entire structure groaned but held. Then silence. Lyra stumbled forward, her vision blurring. The light faded from the reactor. She found Eli slumped near the console, his breathing shallow. No, she whispered, kneeling beside him. Don't you dare, Eli smiled weakly. Told you humans. Never stop trying. Tears welled in her eyes, something rare for her kind. You stupid, brave creature, she whispered, cradling his face. Why would you do this? He looked at her softly. Because someone had to show you. That not all humans destroy. Her fur glowed bright gold, the light spreading across the chamber. Her claws trembled as she pressed her forehead to his. Please stay, she whispered. Don't stop. He smiled faintly, his voice barely a breath. Your fur. It's warm. Then the light in his eyes dimmed. Lyra froze, unable to move. The world around her seemed to vanish. All sound swallowed by the weight of silence. She held him close, her glowing fur wrapping around his body like a shroud of light. You saved them, she whispered, and you saved me. Outside, the storm broke, revealing the night sky filled with stars. The human fleet had escaped. The Velrani forces withdrew, unable to explain the sudden reactor flare. In the ruins of the outpost, Lyra stood alone, Eli's insignia clutched in her hand. Her fur no longer glowed with sorrow, but with something deeper. Resolve. She turned toward the horizon, whispering, If your people ever return, they'll find a Velrani waiting to protect them. As she disappeared into the cold dawn, the wind carried a faint echo, half memory. Half promise. Stop touching my fur, human. Please, don't stop. Days passed on the frozen moon, and the fire from the reactor finally faded, leaving only silence. Lyra stood on the ridge, her fur rippling in the wind. The human fleet had vanished into the stars, saved by the warning Eli gave with his life. Yet the snow below still carried traces of that battle, metal, ash, and the echo of sacrifice. She carried his insignia in her palm, the small metal tag engraved with his name. It felt warm even in the cold. Eli Ward, she whispered. The human who changed everything. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. Velrani tears were not water. They were light. And when they fell, they never stopped glowing. That night, she buried the insignia beneath a frozen tree near the outpost ruins. Her fur glowed gold and blue as she pressed her hand into the snow. You touched my fur, she said softly, and you touched my heart. Weeks later, far across the galaxy, rumors began to spread among both species, a story of a human who stayed behind to save not only his own kind, but the Velrani world too. Some called it propaganda, others called it a myth, but to Lyra it was neither. It was truth carved into her soul. She returned to her command base, silent, her armor cracked and scorched. The Velrani Council summoned her. Their leader, a tall figure with pale silver fur, eyed her coldly. You vanished during a battle, he said. And now you return with tales of humans and reactor explosions. Explain yourself. Lyra stood tall. The human engineer Eli Ward died saving us all, she said. His message prevented a massacre. Your patrols were heading into a trap of their own making. The chamber fell silent. The council exchanged uneasy glances. You risked your life for a human? One sneered. You defied our laws again? Lyra's golden eyes glowed. No, she said firmly. I honored my father's law. Save those who do not deserve death. You have forgotten what it means to protect life. The council hissed, their fur flashing red. You speak treason. Then call it what you want, she said. But the human you fear showed more honor than half this room. The council ordered her detained, but before the guards could move, something unexpected happened. The younger Velrani soldiers, those who had served under Lyra, stepped forward. Their fur shimmered blue and white, the color of respect. She speaks truth, one said. The humans may be our rivals, but they are not monsters. A murmur spread through the hall. Old loyalties trembled, and something new stirred, a spark of unity. Lyra's defiance had planted a seed that could not be erased. Months passed. The war along the border quieted. Patrols turned to scouting, battles turned to silence, and somewhere, in the records of both species, a single encrypted file began circulating anonymously. It contained the recording of Eli's last transmission. This is Engineer Eli Ward. His voice echoed faintly. To whoever hears this, remember, peace doesn't come from power. It comes from the courage to reach across the cold. The message spread across colonies and ships, whispered in bars, replayed in classrooms. Some dismissed it, others cried hearing it. But on Velrani worlds, something miraculous began. Young soldiers stopped treating humans like prey, and humans stopped calling Velrani beasts. 1 year later, Lyra stood again on the same icy ridge. The seasons had shifted. The frozen moon had begun to thaw, small rivers running through the cracks in the ice. She looked toward the horizon, her fur now glowing softly with mixed hues, blue for calm, gold for courage, violet for remembrance. She whispered to the wind, You said humans never stop trying. Her claws brushed over the snow, tracing his name again. So I won't stop either. Behind her, the hum of an engine grew louder. A small human shuttle descended through the storm, bearing the markings of the United Earth Coalition. Lyra turned, her heart trembling. From the open hatch stepped a human woman in a gray uniform. Commander Lyra Varen? The woman asked. We're here to establish contact. We received a signal from this moon sent months ago by an Eli Ward. Lyra's breath caught. He sent it before he... She stopped, unable to finish. The woman smiled gently. He told us someone here would understand. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes bright. Then humanity listened. We did, the woman said. And we want peace. Lyra looked toward the stars, where the ghost of a human laugh still lived somewhere in her memory. She nodded slowly. Then let's build what he died for. As the snow fell softly around her, she whispered once more, her voice carried away by the wind. Stop touching my fur, human. Please, don't stop. The words became legend, a phrase passed down through generations, reminding two once hostile species that sometimes, the smallest gesture, the briefest touch, can rewrite the fate of galaxies. And so the story of Eli Ward and Lyra Varon became known across the stars as The Whisper in the Snow, a tale not of war, but of warmth in the coldest places.